Hello and welcome to another episode of Anniversary Edition. Today we are going to be talking about Fight Club, which celebrates its 20th anniversary this year. Obviously we will spoil the film, so if you haven't seen it, please go watch it first and then come back and have a little listen. I'm Sophie and I am here today with Tom.
Hello.
Hello. So this is 1999 drama. Did I say that right? A 1999.
Yeah,
that
did,
sounds like a little tongue twister. Directed by David Fincher. I've written a little synopsis where I've tried not to give too much away, but obviously, you know, we will be talking about the twist. So here we go. An insomniac office worker befriends a soap salesman and together form a fight club, but things take a darker turn.
Yes.
Yes, they do. So I think we talked about this last week. I've never been able to get through this film in one sitting.
Did you manage it this time?
I did, yes.
Right.
Well done. Pat on the back to me. I do like this film.
Oh, okay.
I don't love it.
No? Okay.
And it feels really long.
Yeah.
I think because I knew the twist and because I know that it's not really about a fight club.
Yeah.
Although I kind of still expected it to be more about a fight club than it was.
Yeah.
I feel like it takes forever to get going.
It does. It's a slow burn.
Yeah, but like boring slow.
Right. Okay.
So recently, funnily enough, I watched Wanted with my housemates.
Right.
I actually...
Is that the Angelina Jolie, James
Yeah.
McAvoy?
Yeah, I saw it in the cinema and I really liked it and I bought it on and I've got it on DVD.
Right.
So we watched it on DVD. And this feels, or that felt, I should say, because of when they were made, really similar in ways
Okay.
to this. Not because of the twist or anything at the end, but like just the fact that it's an office worker, he's bored, things take a real twist.
I'm not sure if I've seen that all the way through. I think I have.
Oh, okay.
It's not a film that I particularly loved or liked.
Yeah.
So I've if I have seen it, I've only seen it once.
Well, the thing
think
that I
I've seen it
liked
all.
about it is that it's a lot quicker to get going, or it
Yes.
feels a lot quicker anyway, but it's still the same hypothesis at the beginning. You have a boring, like unfulfilled office worker who is having problems, not quite to the same degree in this film. But things start moving really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think because I happened to watch that fairly recently, when I was watching this time, the beginning of this seemed so slow.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my, because it's like an hour, right? Like 45 minutes before they start even the first Fight Club.
Yeah. It's a long. Yeah.
And I'm like, how is this film about Fight Club? I mean, like I said, I know that it's not, but even that bit of it, I was like, oh, come on. Like I was bored at the beginning of this film.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I've always turned it off.
Yeah, I can see that. It definitely takes a while to get going, and it definitely. I think it's good because it's a movie that evolves.
Yeah.
Like, you're often in a state where you're like, I have no idea where this is going, and then when you get something like, I've no idea how we got to this point. Like, how did this? But not in a way that you've missed a plot point. Mm-hmm. Just in the like, it's such a slow evolution of the character, and it's it's interesting. I haven't watched this for a long time.
Okay.
And I was unsure as to whether, because when it first came out, when I first saw it, I was just like, okay, wow. I was completely
Did you love
wowed
it
by it.
when you first saw
I
it?
was completely wowed by it because I was just like, it takes. It's going to sound. I don't want this to sound arrogant in a way. I often having a twist in a film that I don't see coming.
Yeah.
Is rare.
Oh no, I'm the same. It doesn't sound arrogant, I don't think. I think it's just the way it's the way your brain works if you're used to reading or watching
exactly
films like
that's the thing. And I think that's because
Yeah.
I've studied film.
Yeah.
So I've been taught how to read film
Yeah.
so that I've got an idea of what to expect.
Yeah.
which means I can anticipate things.
It was like my biggest bugbear when I watch TV shows that are like crime things with my mum. My mum loves them, right?
Yeah.
So whenever I'm home for like Christmas or something and there's like some really cool like Agatha Christie Christmas special on and like everyone's sort of half drunk watching it around this TV. And my mum's like 5 minutes in, oh, so-and-so's going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And she's always right.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because she's reads a lot of crime literature and so I think it's just what you kind of read and what you watch and what you're used to.
Yeah. So having a movie that has a that and when I saw this I would have been 19, 20, so I was in the process of studying film.
Okay.
Because I was at university at that time. So to watch a film that that completely surprised me and was completely not what I thought it was going to be was a really cool experience.
Yeah. See, I'm annoyed that the first time I watched it, I knew what was going to happen.
See that? Yeah, I think that's a big thing with it. And so again, I was always like, well, okay, some movies, when you know there's a plot twist at the end, can completely ruin it.
Yeah. Some it doesn't.
For future viewing.
Yeah.
And some it doesn't. For example, I think that Usual Suspects was great the first time you watch it. When you know
what
the twist,
happens,
you're kind of like, it's not as good repeat viewing.
Yeah.
And I think the filmmakers have to work really hard to encourage repeat viewing.
Yeah, there has to be more going on, right?
Exactly,
than just a big twist reveal.
Yeah. So, like we were talking about Pulp Fiction last week. So that's something Tarantino does. Is that the way he structured his, particularly Pulp Fiction, you get more out of it the more you watch it.
Absolutely, I 100% got way more out of watching it the second time. And I know, like I think I said last week, I feel like I could watch that film, or I need to be able to watch that film like 5, 6 more times to be able to really pick who my favourite character is, because it just keeps giving as a film.
See, now I think with Fight Club is a bit of an interesting thing, because I think that it can hold up and reward you for repeat viewing, but only if you didn't know the twist the first time you watch it.
Oh, interesting.
Because I think that, for example, you knew the twist.
Yeah.
So you were just kind of like, whatever. Like, like it doesn't kind of like take you on the same journey as someone that doesn't know the twist. So when you watch it again, you get even less into it because you weren't into it the first time.
And I think I watched it the first time as someone who watched it the second time.
Yeah.
Because little things
where
like he's like, oh, we've got the same briefcase.
Yes.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
My only reservation, my only curiosity really was who's the real person.
Right, yes.
Because I always assumed it was the narrator, because obviously that's the person you see from day one, and obviously it is. But I was like, oh, is it the twist that the narrator's not real and is narrating externally from Brad Pitt's life?
Yeah, okay, that's
so that. So I was like, oh, does that happen? But I was pretty certain it didn't.
Yeah.
But little things like that, like the briefcase being the same, and like the flashbacks with Helena Bonham Carter's character, and then he's like, "Why is the door shut?" and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "Because it's you."
Because I remember, like, I watched it the first time, was completely taken by surprise, loved it. And at the time felt it was stylistically interesting, all of that kind of stuff. It came out the same year as The Matrix, so there was a lot of like that kind of, like there was a lot of cool different cinema.
See, it feels so weird that it came out the same year as The Matrix. It looks really dated in comparison to The Matrix.
See, I think it does actually look a bit more dated.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, does have a bit of the trap and the vibe that I was a bit worried about that The Matrix would fall into, and that didn't, but this does a little bit. I don't think some of the uses of CGI don't quite hold up.
Yeah.
And there's way more CGI than I remember.
Okay, that's interesting.
And like, but to finish my thought
Sorry.
about the no, it's right. To finish my thought about the viewing times,
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I watched it back for the second time,
Yeah.
I got so much out of finding those
Mm-hmm.
Easter eggs
Yes.
and finding the moments where you're like, oh my God, I never noticed
Yeah.
that Helena Bonham Carter, Brad Pitt, and Edward Norton are never in the same scene together.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was
Whereas
all of
I
that
was looking
stuff.
for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's like, I think that for you just becomes not really.
It's just a bit mediocre, and you don't
Yeah.
have the love, the spark ignited from
Yeah.
the first time to want
Yes.
to watch it again.
Whereas for someone who did have that first time, that becomes a game. It becomes a fun game.
Yeah, because
finding
you're
those-
like, oh
and
my
all
God,
of
no,
the-
that can't be right. I
'cause
must have missed something.
There are all the flash frames of Brad Pitt up to
Exactly.
that point before he appears.
And it's so clever because then when he says that that's what he does in his spare time, when he flashes bits of like
yes.
porn films into like
Yeah,
family
yeah.
films, and then you're like, well, but that's what I was seeing at the beginning of the
Yeah,
film,
yeah.
because he's inserting himself into
yeah.
and I mean, yeah, it's so interesting because I do feel like it was a little bit ruined for me watching this.
It's such a shame.
But having said that, I did still. There was some, like I said, I was kind of a bit. Oh well, wait, is it a bigger twist? And is Brad Pitt the real person?
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, when he starts kind of like multiplying and getting these people to stand outside, and sorry, he's not multiplying. When the characters are stood outside,
Yes.
like the group of
Yes.
men
Yeah.
waiting to come and like live in the house and make soap and destroy the world. Because I knew the twist, I then was like, oh God, is he falling even further off his kind
Are
of
those
his
people
spectrum?
then?
Are they? Is he creating
An
multiple
imaginary
personalities?
army, yeah.
But then as soon as Helena Bonham Carter's character comes to the garden and she's like, who are all these people? I was like, oh, okay, so she's, that's not right.
Yeah.
So there was enjoyment in bits because I was like, oh, is that what happens? And oh, is this what happens? But it was more me trying to figure out the twist before I got there.
Yeah.
Rather than me just watching the film.
Yeah, because I also think like the reason you find it slow and boring is probably because you know that. Whereas to someone who doesn't,
you want to know what happens.
you're just like, who is this guy? Why? Like, what is going on? Where is all this going? And that intrigue draws you through it.
Yeah.
And for me, like watching it this time, like I've been trying to think when the last time I watched this film was.
Okay.
And I really can't put my finger on it because two things occurred to me watching it. And I think that's just to do with like getting older and like where I am in my life and things like that. And it's firstly, this was made 2 years or released 2 years before 9/11.
God, yeah, okay.
And like you're essentially watching a movie that explains how people become radicalized.
Yeah. And that's not pleasant to watch.
No, and it's kind of like, oh wow, like, 9/11 took the US and the rest of the world by surprise.
Yeah.
Yet 2 years earlier, this massive movie had literally like shown this is how terrorist cells operate. This is how terrorist cells get formed. They prey on people.
Yeah.
And so that I found kind of fascinating, and it made me think, have I even watched it since then? Which I think I must have done.
Okay.
But I don't feel like I have because that thought had never occurred to me before.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that I never realised how much it's about mental health.
Yeah. Because in your head, it's not. When you remember watching this film, I would imagine it's like it's a film about a guy and things spiraling out of control and a fight club.
Yeah.
Even though it's not, and even after you've watched the film, you know it's not about a fight club. But in your memory, I think it sits because it's called Fight Club.
Exactly, yes.
It sits in your head as a film about fighting, and that's how that's the thing that changes everything that happens.
Yeah.
And that's it's the Fight Club that drives everything else forward.
Yes. Yes.
So as a memory of a film, that is the thing that kind of tips the plot forward.
Yes.
So I completely understand why it would be like that.
Yeah,
As a memory of a film.
Yeah. So those are the things that kind of like made me go, oh, weird.
Yeah.
So I think like the whole mental health thing
Yeah.
became more apparent for me because of a few reasons, like a documentary I've been making, but then also like one we've made
Yeah.
that we're going to release next month.
Yes.
About a safe environment. The documentary we made is about a barber shop that wants to be a safe environment for men to talk about anything, and it made me realise that okay, like you see the narrator going to those groups because he needs whatever it is that he needs an outlet. He needs an emotional release.
Yes.
And you see like the men in the testicular cancer one, like Meatloaf as Bob, who's just amazing in this film. So good
in this film.
Absolutely amazing. Like seeing that group dynamic and seeing that those men feel the only way they can get themselves mentally in the right place is to express the only emotion that society allows them to express, which is anger and violence.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like, it just rammed home to me like all of that stuff that we've been researching and we've been talking about with the documentary that we've got coming out, a little short, that, men do need that place. Men do need that release, and it doesn't have to be violence. Anger or violence. Like men are allowed to have more a range of emotions than that.
Yep.
And I found it so fascinating watching it from the point of view that then becomes how they get radicalized.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to how army units are melded together.
Well, there's such a strong sense of camaraderie in those groups.
Yeah.
Which you do see other groups. There are lots of other groups initially, but the one obviously that you focus on more so is the testicular cancer.
Yeah.
And then obviously they're all living together in the house, and there's such a sense of camaraderie.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're working towards a larger goal.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think obviously because of the way that I watched this film and because of when I've watched this film, like you say, I'm glad that we're in a time where people can talk more openly about mental health. And that's how I viewed this film.
Yeah.
So all the twist and the, oh my gosh, is Brad Pitt real? And blah, blah, blah. In some ways I'm annoyed because it was that element of the enjoyment of the film wasn't there for me. But at the same time, it kind of meant that I could watch it for some of the other things that it talks about. And they are huge themes. And also, I think when so I'm like, my mind is quite curious about this film because when we first see him go to the doctor and he says, I'm an insomniac and I can't sleep. And he's completely let down by the health service that is offered to him. Because I think, well, if he had been given sleep, which is what he needed, he wouldn't have created a personality as an outlet or support system, or would he? Because it's like, or has he done that before?
So I think the insomnia is a byproduct of the split personality disorder. So I think I'm not a psychologist. My wife is. She'll probably tell me I've got this wrong. But I feel like he's got a split personality disorder, which means that when he becomes Tyler, like there are moments when he becomes Tyler where he's not there anymore and he's fully Tyler.
Yep.
And that to him feels like that's why he's getting no sleep. So like that, like it's
because when he should be sleeping, he's Tyler.
He's actually Tyler. So
but
that's
we don't
why,
see any of that.
No, you never see that
until obviously we meet Tyler on the plane.
And that's when those two personalities start to talk to each other. That's the bit about the psychology. I don't know. I don't know enough about split personality disorders to understand how that works within someone's brain. How two separate personalities can talk to each other.
Yes.
Like I think one can replace the other.
Yeah.
And but
the interaction between them is something I'm not familiar with.
And like I know people can have multiple split personalities, and some can communicate with each other and some can't. So
Wow.
I think so like there's all of that going on,
Yeah.
which lends itself to the confusion on the viewer's part, because you're just like, and then you start to like, there are certain moments when I'm just like, but there are scenes when Brad Pitt and Ed Norton are both in them and there are other people there.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, wait, does only one of them ever interact
Yes.
in that scene?
Yeah.
And it's those kind of things you're just like, oh God, I never noticed.
But it's so clever because you don't notice it.
No.
And like I said, I watched it noticing it because I was watching it for that. But it's when they're in the Fight Club as well, he's always in the background, the narrator, and Brad Pitt is, one of the ones fighting or leading the fight.
Yeah.
And so the two of them are never interacting with the same one person at the time because obviously they can't.
They can't, yeah.
I mean, it is an astoundingly clever film because of the way it's done.
Yeah.
Unless you know the twist, I don't think you're disappointed. I don't think you would be disappointed by watching it because I think you'd be like, oh my God, like that. How is that? The only bits kind of that I was a bit like, with that in mind, were right at the end when he's like beating himself. Obviously, he's beating himself up because it's not Brad Pitt that's beating him up, but you can see it on the CCTV. So it flips back to the camera that's observing him. Yeah. And I'm like, how is he dragging himself? That's the only thing. Yeah. Because he's like, his body is up. He's only on his feet. And he's being dragged backwards.
Right.
And I was like, how would you physically do that?
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, that's being very picky.
Yeah,
and
no,
it's one tiny thing.
Yeah.
And there's probably a perfectly logical explanation. I just don't know it. But yeah, I was, like I said, I did like this film. And I think, so Ed Norton, for me, I've seen him in a couple of things, and I think he is a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt is amazing in this.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of the best things I've ever seen Brad Pitt in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think this was the movie that made you go, oh wait, Brad Pitt.
Yeah. He's a good actor, isn't he?
Yeah, he's not just...
Rather than just a pretty face, and pigeonholed as sort of a stereotypical
male
blonde hair, romantic
blue
lead.
eye. Yeah.
Because, I mean, before this, I think he'd probably done stuff like Meet Joe Black and...
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe around similar time, I guess. But yeah, very very kind of perfect American boy, you know?
Yeah.
And Helena Bonham Carter is phenomenal. Like, the cast for this film and the performances are just amazing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a real... I mean, it kind of feels like an ensemble because they're so close as characters. But they're so good. I couldn't pick like a favorite character or a favorite performance out of the three of them. I think they're amazing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think they all just work perfectly together. David Fincher's always great at casting his films. If you think about it, you say like Brad Pitt is like he's known as this kind of like good looking pretty one. It's like Tyler Durden is supposed to be everything that the narrator wishes he was.
Yeah.
So like Brad Pitt, it's like of course you're going to pick being like handsome and blonde, and like like muscular and
to
like,
be.
Yeah, like that's like that's it was just such a perfect choice. But for him to back that up with a performance like he does,
it's so good. And I love that you trust Tyler, even though like I knew that he was a second, like I knew that the twist, but you trust Tyler at the beginning, and because I had no idea about the whole like. The extra guys and the bombs and like I knew nothing about any of that. Like, so as much as I say, I knew the twist, all I knew was that they're the same person. And so I think like when I was watching it, obviously at the beginning you have that, he seems quite like
charismatic.
Yeah, very charismatic. He's a soap salesman, He goes out for a beer. He seems a bit sort of, I don't know, like scatty. He's a bit kind of.
Yeah, he's charming, and he's just.
But he's
like,
very Whereas,
you're right. He does seem trustworthy.
Yeah,
bizarrely.
and then it's even in the detail of like his costumes. So the costume
Yeah.
design. So when he starts appearing like later and later in the film, he's more disheveled and less representative of the Tyler that you're introduced to at the beginning. And like he's wearing like, you know, weird multicolored like flamboyant outfits, and you're like, what? Like this is not, obviously it's, as you say, it's kind of, it's everything that Ed Norton's character wants him to be.
Yeah.
But he starts to disassociate with
Yeah.
the representation that he's seeing in front of him, and he starts to think, okay, this isn't, well, because obviously he's imagining it, but
Yeah.
he's seeing him in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, he's not trustworthy.
He loses
He's a
control.
liability. Yeah, and so Ed Norton loses control, but what you actually see is Tyler's losing control
Yes.
at the same time,
Yeah.
obviously, because they're one and the same.
Yeah.
But it is so cleverly done.
Yeah, and also because, like, if you think about the scene when they first meet, and you can tell they're completely on the same wavelength as they would be.
Yeah.
And Ed Norton's just like, oh, you know, you're the best single serving friend I've ever had, because I have this theory, blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah, I know, I get it. It's really
Yeah.
clever.
And you're like, oh, okay.
And it's like, oh right, so and then because you know he's as clever as
As
the
me.
narrator is,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
And it's just like he becomes this very safe kind of character, even
Yeah.
though he's the chaotic force,
Yeah.
which is just
It is.
bizarre.
It's like
but
he
it-
finds, Ed Norton's character finds safety and security and stability
yeah,
in his own creation of chaos.
yes,
Like you say, it's a completely bizarre concept to try and get your head around.
yeah,
But it's so fascinating. And
Yeah.
so I do like this film. But again, I'm trying to think like I said last week with Pulp Fiction, I think you'd have to be in a really specific
yeah.
headspace to want to watch this film.
Yeah, I actually have to say, like, this time round, I probably enjoyed it less than I have done in the past, and I found it a tougher watch. I found it more brutal than I had in the past. I found it more dark and twisted than I
Yeah.
had it before.
I think it's really
Doesn't make
sad.
it any. Yeah, it is. It doesn't make it any. It doesn't mean I think any less of it as of a film.
Yeah.
But it's just like my opinion of it and my experience of it has definitely evolved and changed over time.
Yeah.
But you know you can't fault a single performance in this.
Oh no, it's.
I
mean,
love
it's great
Meatloaf.
acting. He's
I was just like,
so good.
I just, you know, like I just remember like watching this film with literally not knowing much going into it. I seem to remember actually it was the reason I picked it was my friend at uni called Graham. He watched it and raved about it, and he's like, "You have to watch it. You have to watch it. You have to watch it."
Oh, interesting.
And I remember picking it up and then just like, man, I was like, "Hang on a minute, that's Meatloaf.
Yeah.
What's Meatloaf doing in this thing with
Do you
those
know-
ridiculous man boobs
It
that he's
didn't
got?"
even clock that it was Meatloaf for me until like right near the end.
Yeah, and I was just like, he's such a good actor.
He's phenomenal because
Yeah.
his character is
Oh.
so well written.
Yeah, he plays him with such sort of pathos and
Yeah.
humanity, and
Yes.
and the bit where he turns up on the step to join the cause,
Oh, I know.
and Tyler just shuts him down,
Yeah.
and just says the most horrible things, and he just kind of looks at him like, "Why are you saying this to me? You're
yeah,
my
why
friend."
are you being so horrible to me?
And Tyler walks away, and Bob just is like, and he just
gonna
starts to
get my
walk
stuff,
away because he
yeah.
knows. And Ed Norton feels sorry for him. I think that's
Yeah.
the moment. That might be for me the defining moment where the narrator and Tyler split in terms of
Yeah, because the narrator's on Tyler's side initially.
all the time. But that's
Yeah.
that point. I can't think of one before that. There may well be, but I feel like that's the moment where the personalities stop being on the same page.
Yeah,
if that
and
makes
where
sense.
the narrator or Ed or whoever starts to lose control
Yeah.
of Tyler's
Tyler.
actions.
Yeah.
So whilst he has a bit of fun with him
Mm,
because it's like, you know, he messes up at the restaurant job, and you know, like he plays around with teasing with the boundaries of what he should and shouldn't be doing as a human being.
yeah,
But it's when all that starts to slip, like
Yeah.
you say, and when he's cruel to Bob, and they start
Yeah.
doing things that are like way outside of what they should be doing,
Yeah.
you get that kind of the narrators with Ed, and then you get this like side.
Yeah. I'm going to revise what I said. It's not the moment that they start to split. It's the moment that the narrator realizes that they've split. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
Tyler's already been
Yeah,
off,
he's always been doing
off around the country,
naughty things and
setting up other fight clubs,
Yeah.
doing all this other stuff that the narrator has no idea about. I think
Yeah.
that's the point where he realizes
yes,
that, okay,
that he,
there's
and that he's
other
becoming a
stuff.
liability, I think,
Yes.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That he's starting to lose
Yeah.
control of him. That he
Yeah.
can't, because it's like, no, hang on a minute, that's my friend.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have many, but I recognize
Yes.
that that's a kind, good man.
Yes.
And I don't condone the way you're behaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right. It's that like he starts to kind of move away from accepting that Tyler is off doing his own things, and like, or
Yeah.
whether he knows that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those movies. It's just absolutely fascinating. You can dig so far into it, and
Yeah.
I said last week, it's all based on Chuck Palahniuk's novel, and I think that's something he, as a novelist, is very, very good at.
I mean, does he do we know like about Chuck, whether he studied psychology or just because he
I'm not
plays
sure.
around with dark themes, you were saying
Yeah,
last
yeah,
week.
yeah. I'm not sure. All I really know, I mean, like I said last week, I sat and chatted with him while we were filming some interviews with him. All I can remember about him is that he worked in like one of the he worked in a big factory that did like truck diagnostics or something, like
really?
like the big HGVs or whatever, and like he was doing like electronic diagnostics or something like that, and that's what he was doing when he started writing short stories. I think for a man who's come up with all of this stuff, he has to there must be something.
He must have some knowledge, right?
In his past or some life experiences that like, I don't know, I can only assume that there is something that makes him fascinated by this stuff.
I would love to have a conversation with someone who is like a trained psychologist about this film, because there's so much that I don't understand. And I think it's really interesting. Like I said, because the twist bit of it was kind of ruined for me, I picked up on a lot of stuff that, like you said at the beginning when we started talking about this, I think you don't really get until you watch it on the sort of the second or the third, or even the even more watches. But I just found it really sad. Like I literally, I was like low after I watched this film. It's a really emotionally kind of, it's quite draining watching it. And I felt quite sad. I felt sad for the character. I felt curious about like how he was going to move forward, but I was so desperate and willing him at the end to tell Helena Bonham Carter's character that he, like, what was wrong with him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, she'll make you go and get help.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to get this under control.
Yeah. Instead, he
just sort of
commits
palms
an
it
act
off.
of violence which causes Tyler to disappear. And it's kind of like, okay, does that mean that because he's inflicted, because he shoots himself through the jaw, and it's like, okay, now that he's done that, has that flicked a switch, which means that Tyler is dead to him now?
Yeah, and does he feel like he's in control now?
Will Tyler come back at any point?
Yeah, and will Tyler come back if there's a point at which he needs him to?
Yeah.
Like
I have a feeling that there is a Fight Club 2 book.
Yeah, I think there is a book. I'd be interested to see kind of what happens with that. But yeah, I mean, there's so much that kind of like needs picking apart in this film. And I think like there's loads about, like, we've talked about, mental health and like men's mental health particularly, but also like enabling men to work together. Like it's badly, I mean, it's nothing good comes out of their relationships with each other.
No.
And it empowers really negative male relationships.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, like, there's so much going on here, and like the
Yeah.
way that he treats. Why can I not remember the name of the character of Helena Bonham Carter? Marla.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that she's treated,
Mm.
especially given that she doesn't understand what's happening, and obviously
Yeah.
to her, she's just dating this guy
Yeah.
or
And it's
seeing this
just,
guy, whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, she or however she would define it, and he absolutely is vile to her.
Mm.
You know, most women would, I would hope, think that that was odd behaviour.
Yeah.
And she does. There's moments where she's like, "What did you just say?"
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of those times, and it's when he's stood at the top of the stairs down to the basement,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Who are you talking?" And because he can hear Tyler,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Who are you talking to?" And then he says, "Us" or something, and then she says, I can't remember her exact words, but she's like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "No, tell me what you just said.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?" And so she gets little moments of it, but she doesn't have enough pieces
Yeah.
to piece anything together to make sense of anything.
Absolutely, because she's clearly suffering from her own problems. So
Yeah.
she's almost like he's
Exactly.
a kindred spirit.
Yes.
Yet she has no idea to the extent to which he suffers. I think
He's
she sees
struggling.
him as someone who's more stable than
Then
her.
she is, yeah. But he's definitely not.
No, so that makes that dynamic really like unusual.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I remember when I worked in Blockbuster, we had we would rent this movie out a lot, and you could tell there were two sorts of people that rented it.
Mm-hmm.
The sorts of people that saw it as Fight Club, violence.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Clearly didn't even come close to scratching the surface of it.
Yeah.
And then people that were like, okay, that was profoundly like different.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot more to this than you think. And it was. I always felt as like it's such a shame when people would watch it only on its face value and think,
Yeah.
I want to watch it because people fight in it. And
Yeah.
then that's all they end up getting out of it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't understand how you can watch this movie and not get anything other than that out of
No,
it.
me neither.
So, you know, it was always one of those movies that, like, you know, people would get a little bit of judgment on if they rented it, because you'd be like, okay, yeah, all right, you're that type of person or you're that type of person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's a fascinating film, and I think if you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
Yeah.
But obviously, we've completely spoiled it, but
Yeah.
so you'll get my experience of watching the film rather
Yeah,
than
not
Tom's.
mine, yeah.
Sorry. But I do think it's worth watching, and I do think
Yeah.
there's a lot to talk about. But
I
I
think so
would
too.
I would be really interested to talk about some of these things with someone who actually, like, from an expert
Understands
point of
them. Yeah,
view, because
yeah.
it's so much of it is beyond me.
Yeah. Same
Um,
here.
But yeah, definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, definitely.
But I definitely want to read the book, because I
Yeah.
think there might be a bit more of an explanation in places in there. I'm not sure.
I can't remember. It's been a long time since I read the book, but
Okay.
I can't remember.
We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll dig out some of his others for you as well.
Thank you. So next week we are going to be talking about the Blair Witch Project, because next week is Halloween.
Yeah.
Can you believe? So I've not seen this. That should be my my official hashtag for life. So have you seen this film before?
Yeah, that's right, when it came out.
Oh, did you, in the cinema?
No, not in the cinema. I was at university, and I would have seen it when it came out on VHS, put it that way.
Okay.
Because I think we watched it as part of our course.
okay.
Even though it
That's
had just
interesting.
come out, there was reason enough for some of the students and our lecturers to say we should watch this and talk about it.
Okay. I mean, I've got lots of friends that I know saw it at the time.
Yeah.
I was never massively into watching horror films. Like
No,
when I
I'm
was
still
kid.
not.
No, I mean, I enjoy them more now, actually.
Yeah.
But I don't really find gory films scary.
Okay.
I'm like, it's a bit, because it's so fantastical, I
Yeah.
think, that I don't.
Yeah. Blair Witch isn't gory, so
No, it's more of a kind of jumpy suspense
Yeah, it's more
film.
yeah,
and
that's
they're the
what it's
ones that
designed to be.
I get the better reaction from.
Okay,
So I kind
that's
of,
good.
if
Right.
anyone does get enjoyment out of watching horror films,
Yeah.
that's the type of film that I prefer.
Okay.
I've seen the trailer,
Yeah.
and I know the premise.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who, when I said, I was like, oh, you know, I need to watch Blair Witch at some point, like this week. So I'll probably watch it on the weekend. And she was like, oh, is it a documentary? And I was like, no.
You should have said yes.
Because it's
Should have
filmed
said
like
yes
that.
and watch it with them. That would have been amazing. Because you know, like this is the thing. I don't think I've watched it since then.
Okay.
So like, you know, I think I've probably seen it twice.
Right.
Both in that
Yep.
lesson, if you like, a class at a university, and
Yeah.
then maybe like once at a mate's house afterwards, on like Halloween or something. So I feel like I've seen it twice, but I don't think I've seen it more than that.
Right.
But I'm kind of a bit like, I feel like, is it going to be this we were talking about all throughout today? Is it something that can hold up when you know the conceit or
Yeah.
the twist or the whatever? Like can this work
Yeah.
for you as a horror movie?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what we'll talk about most next week.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
So I'll watch it. I'll try and watch it at night so that I get, you know, the full whammy of
Yeah.
a horror film. But yeah, I'll be interested to see because obviously it's a really different type of horror film, and it was really low budget and right? Am I right in thinking it
Yes.
was like indie vibes?
Very low budget.
So
So
yeah.
one thing I will say about it,
Okay.
since we're talking about budget, it was shot and made for $60,000,
Okay.
which is not a huge amount of money. It's
No.
not the lowest budget film I've ever
No,
seen,
no.
but it's not a lot. I'm not entirely sure where all that money went, but that's what the budget was.
Okay.
I assume that kind of includes things like marketing and some other
yeah,
stuff,
I would assume
right?
so.
It made over 200 million. It
Wow.
still holds the world record for the biggest return on single dollar investment. So for every
Whoa.
dollar they spent, they made nearly $11,000 back.
Wow, if anyone has any ideas for a film that they think will do that.
Yeah.
Well, because I've heard, you know, filmmakers and people in the industry since always kind of reference, oh, you know, it's going to be another Blair Witch.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well,
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because I think there's going to be a lot to talk about, not specifically about the film,
yeah.
but about what surrounded the film, how it was marketed, and all that kind of stuff. So I think we've got a lot to talk about there. Yeah, it's
I'm
going to be an
excited.
interesting episode, I think.
So join us next week then for a spooky Halloween episode.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for listening for today. Bye.
Bye.